Unit 3, Evolution and the Nature of Science. Definition. The process in which significant changes in the inheritable traits, example, genetic makeup, of a species occur over time. It is a scientific theory, as well as a substantive explanation of the same aspect of the natural world that can incorporate facts, laws, inference, and tested hypothesis. Scientific laws are predictive. They tell you what will happen, not how or why it happens. Theories are used to explain how and why of the phenomena. They are used to explain the observations or laws. 6 rules of empirical reasoning. Filters. The F stands for falsifiability. Prove me wrong. Claims must be testable or possible or to prove untrue. Logic. An argument must be sound. Conclusions must follow from the premises which turned into must be true and sound. Comprehensiveness. All of the available evidence, not only the evidence that supports the theory, is being tested. Honesty. No self-discipline and willingness to change beliefs when facts dictate a change. And repeatability. Others must be able to repeat your success. Evidence of evolution. There is evidence in fossils. So fossils appears in chronological order. The transitional fossils show the intermediates between organisms. The deeper the fossil is, the older it is, and therefore the more simpler. Fossils show how individual species change over time. Fossils are dated to using radiometric dating. Geographical distribution is how species have to be able to get from place to place to inhabit them. Comparative anatomy. Homologous structures have the same ancestor but serve different functions in modern species. Divergent evolution is related species evolve different traits. Convergent evolution is different species evolve similar traits. Analogous structures have a common function but come from different ancestors. Vestigial structures serve no purpose in a living organism but may have served purpose in the past. Embryology, the study of developing forms of embryos. All vertebrate embryos follow a common developmental path due to their common ancestry. The more closely related two organisms are, the more likely their embryos are to resemble each other for long periods of time. Comparative biochemistry. Determining and comparing DNA-based sequences and amino acid sequences from different animals. More closely related, more similar biochemical makeups. A, T, C, G, all organisms. Similar chemistry and similar structure of chromosomes in eukaryotes. Chlorophyll is the same basic molecule in all photosynthetic organisms. Cytochrome C is a respiratory enzyme. Enzymes are common to large groups of animals. DNA fingerprinting and comparisons. The theory of evolution by natural selection. Charles Darwin theorized, every generation produces far more offspring than can survive and pass on this variability. Populations of the same species tend to remain stable in numbers. Members of the same species compete with each other for survival. Individuals with more favorable variations are more likely to survive and pass on these traits. Survival is not random. With succeeding generations, these favorable variations will become more. Types of selection. Natural selection, the way in which the environment or nature favors the reproductive success of certain individuals over others. Artificial selection, artificial because it occurs in captivity and humans choose which specific trait animals pass on. Directional selection, selection that favors an increase or decrease in the value of a trait from the current population average. Stabilizing selection occurs when the average trait is favored by the environment. Selection against individuals having variations in a trait that deviates from the average population. Disruptive selection favors an individual with variations at opposite extremes of a trait over those with intermediate variation. Sexual selection, the favoring of any trait that enhances the mating success of an individual. Mimicry. Batesian mimicry is one species that isn't poisonous mimics a species that is. Mullerian mimicry, one species that is slightly poisonous mimics another that is very poisonous, and the last one is camouflage. And then the advantages of mimicry are they make you invisible to predators, they make predator avoid eating you, and either way it increases the mimic's chance of surviving and reproducing. The Hardy-Weinberg principle. Natural selection favors passing of some alleles over others. Small population size increase with the likelihood of genetic drift. Mutations introduce new alleles to a population. Immigration and emigration introduces or removes alleles in a population. Horizontal gene transfer, gaining of new alleles from different species. No natural selection, no mutations, no migration, random mating only, and populations must be very large. Speciation. Microevolution. Changes in gene frequency and phenotypic traits within a population. Speciation refers to the change in all allele frequencies that are significant enough to mark the formation of daughter species and parental species. Speciation requires irreversible genetic divergence of one population from the others. Isolation mechanisms maintain genetic divergence. Definitions. Allopatric speciation, the form of a new species as a result of evolutionary changes following a period of geographic isolation. Sympatric speciation, evolution of populations within the same geographic area into separate species. Prezygotic mechanisms, reproductive isolation mechanisms that prevent interspecies mating and fertilization. Mechanical isolation, genitals are shaped differently so they cannot have sex. Gametic isolation, sperm and egg do not recognize each other so they cannot combine. Post-zygotic mechanisms, reproductive isolating mechanisms that prevent maturation and reproduction of the offspring and interspecies reproduction. Zygotic mortality, the zygote dies in the mom's stomach. Hybrid invitality can mate and be born but will not make it past the age of 3. Hybrid infertility is the hybrid can live long and prosper but cannot have kids. Ecological isolation. Very similar species may occupy different habitats within a region. Temporal isolation. Species breed at different times of the year. Behavioral isolation. Different species use different courtship and other mating techniques to find and attract a mate. The bottleneck and the founder effect. The bottleneck, in a large group of organisms, say a volcano erupts and kills thousands of organisms, leaving only 50 to survive. Rare alleles that were in the large group may be completely eliminated because most of the organisms who survive are common. When 50 grow into a large population, they will be all genetically similar and the gene pool will show little variation. The founder effect. Few organisms leave a large group and travel to another island. The few organisms on that island will repopulate, and when they do so, the gene pool will show little genetic variation. Some important people to remember. Lamarck, evolutionary change from 2 principles. 1. Use and disuse. Structures can become bigger and stronger. Structures that are used become bigger and stronger, and structures that are unused become smaller and weaker. And 2. The inheritance of acquired characteristics. Individuals could pass on their offspring characteristics by the acquired during their lives. Example, giraffes stretch necks over time. Their offspring born will be with a slightly longer neck. George Cuvier. First detailed study of fossils. Fossils of very simple organisms are found in all depths of fossil deposits. More complex fossils are found in shallower, younger rock. Fossils in younger rock are more likely to resemble living species. Rock layers contain fossils of many species that do not occur above or below them. Charles Lyell, Uniformitarianism and the Principles of Geology. Earth has been changed in the past in the same way it has been changed now. Geological change is slow and gradual, and the natural laws that influence these changes are constant and eternal. Thomas Malthus, The Principle of Populations essay. Populations limited in size by the environment and particular food supply. Populations could not grow indefinitely, and species produce large numbers of offspring but will not survive. Urey and Miller, they carried out an experiment to mimic the life on primordial Earth, organs of life. They figured out how to create all 20 amino acids by modeling the Earth's water cycle with other weather elements. Stephen Jay Goldage and Niles Eldredge, the population of equilibrium, the theory of punctuated equilibrium. The fossil records often showed new species appearing quite suddenly and then reaching and remaining unchanged over long periods of time. It indicates that the process of evolution is slow but occasionally punctuated by periods of rapid change.